If a person saw that same area of the body a month before and they saw it was a red area, how would that impact your opinion at all?
Well, at that point in time, that would mean that when it was red, that it was probably seen fresher in its fresh state. And then as it then becomes a scar, it's white and it's older. So if someone saw that broad area on her lower abdomen and it's red, it means that it had occurred sooner than when I saw it, when it was just an old scar at that point in time.
Dr. Darrisaw, in states 411, if we could light for a second. Is anything that we are looking at here nicks from shaving Layla's head?
No, sir.
How about in states 412?
I don't see any. If I can see the actual picture, a small little nick that may be made at the time of autopsy probably wouldn't even project very well on the screen. No, I don't see any. It's quite common that you're very careful when shaving the scalp, especially when there are injuries. Like I say, maybe one or two or three things, maybe a very superficial lifting of the skin, but it's certainly not causing red abrasions with healing and bruises. That's not something that comes from shaving the scalp.
How about states 413? You seeing any of these nicks that you're talking about?
I see your picture up, just...
Sure.
No, I don't see any. It looks like this shaves quite well without any nicks.
Dr. Darrisaw, the defense also asked you about not seeing any shoe or foot imprints, correct?
It's correct.
In abdominal trauma cases, is that unusual if it was inflicted on the front side?
No, and I think I've testified to that before. One can have actually a very significant impact to the abdomen with a steering wheel. If it doesn't impact the chest, and if it's just in the abdomen, that's just going to compress all that skin. It's going to injure all of the internal organs, but very commonly you won't see anything on the outside. So you can talk about a shoe, a bat, a steering wheel in the very compressible skin of the abdomen and not see anything on the outside. So the inside reflects the injuries.
The lights can come up. You also discussed it's rare to see rib fractures in children. Can you tell us a little bit more about how children's ribs are at Layla's age?
Well, the ribs in children, they can be bent, and you can press on them, and that's why when you have an actual rib fracture, the mechanism is a very forceful squeezing. Typically in that forceful squeezing, the rib cage is a rounded cage, and in that forceful squeezing you tend to see the fractures along the side. So if you kind of envision me squeezing ribs here, the fracture would be along the side as I squeeze it together. Or also you may see it just along the back where you're squeezing in. And it requires significant force because the bone is a lot more pliable in the child at this point in time at 2 years of age.
You also discussed with Ms. Mull that the unlikelihood that once Layla was in distress, that she would continue to bruise, correct? Once she was in cardiac distress.
Once she was actually in distress and not, we've already talked about once a person dies, well, the heart is not beating at all. But when someone is going into shock and they require CPR, their heart may be still beating faintly, and then as you do CPR, you're getting a little bit of blood pressure, so you may have blood vessels breaking and a small amount of bleeding around it, like in the picture of her heart on the surface. That's really consistent with something that you may see with a CPR injury. The heart is not beating very well. there's a small amount of bleeding around it.
If, assuming Layla was in stress, okay, would you expect, in showing the State's Exhibit 1, would you expect to see that amount of bruising?
Again, just for the purpose of me making note of the fact that this is not an autopsy photograph, kind of like to talk about my pictures that I directed. But yeah, these are a lot of bruises on the back, and this appears to be a picture taken obviously before she came to autopsy. So there's extensive amount of bruising that you see right now. Bruises really don't develop immediately after they're sustained.
And I'm sorry, Dr. Darrisaw, I couldn't locate it before, but now I have. So now this is one of your photos, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. If I can have one moment, Your Honor.
Nothing further.
Did you notice any hair having been pulled out of the head?
I didn't notice any patches of hair loss that would be consistent with hair being pulled out of the head. No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Nothing else? All right, thank you, doctor. You can step down.
Thank you.
And can she be excused?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, you're excused.
Thank you, sir.
All right, do we have another short witness? Where are we at this point?
And Judge, at this time, the state of Georgia rests.
Okay, state rests. Counsel first. We're going to go ahead and excuse you for the rest of the day. There are some things that we need to do outside of your presence. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you again for your time and your patience.